It's time for the Financial Crisis Talk Center with Ken Gross and David Einstandig from Thav Gross.
Credit card debt is number one. I view it as financial cancer.
40% of your gross income is going to just pay the debt service. You got no chance of getting out.
I would give up my credit score to get rid of debt.
Here's your host, Ken Gross.
Good morning. Welcome to the Financial Crisis Talk Center. Brisk outside. Winter is here. Wonderland season to be jolly. All those good things. We've got shows to talk about today. Word of the day for this show is Case Study Day. We're going to do 3 case studies.
The word of the day is case study day?
Case Study Day, yeah.
Okay.
The phrase. It's a phrase.
Phrase of the day.
We use word in a very broad sense of the term. David Einstein, good morning. Nice to have you with us this morning.
Good morning, Ken. It's always a pleasure.
Jenny Lingle, I forgot, ladies first. Jenny Lingle, tax
morning,
expert,
Ken.
is here. Sit up, Jenny. I can't see you there.
Sit up. Talk to the microphone.
That's because you've got the large chair back there.
Oh, we're going to have to change that around. We've got to be able to see Jenny. Much more visible than me. Oh, wait. But no, there's Brian. Good morning, Brian.
Good morning, Ken. It's wonderful to be here this morning. Absolutely a pleasure to be here with the cold winter and brisk weather, which is just, it's the holiday season.
Brian, is that shirt velour?
No, it's corduroy.
It's
Now-
appropriate for the weather conditions. It's a good lawyerly shirt. Just, it's fine.
It was clean.
I'm going to start each segment out with a quote from John Kennedy. We're going to do that for a while. We
JFK?
started from JFK. The problems of the world cannot possibly be solved by skeptics or cynics whose horizons are limited by the obvious realities. We need men who can dream of things that never were. I
Wow,
hope you
that's
don't take
deep.
exception to that, Jenny. But that was in the 60s. So I just kind of wanted to share that with you. We'll share one as we start each segment of the show
Do you think
for a while.
he came up with a lot of these quotes that he's attributed to, or writers?
I guess it's a subject of debate. I think it's probably a combination of both, but I think he was very literary in terms of he was a reader and he was a thinker beyond being a mover and a shaker and a ladies' man and everything else.
Well,
he was a lot of things.
Clearly, the quote is ageless, though. That is something that is true, as true today as it was then, and it will be as true 50 years from now as it is today.
And the ones I've gone through a lot of his quotes, and I've tried to pick ones out, I think, today that are applicable to the things that we cover in the show, and even though they were written 50 years ago. Some of his quotes that I've read we'll cover in subsequent shows, illustrate how little we've moved in 50 years. So they're still applicable. Some of them, when they're talking about war and the Cold War and things like that, it's interesting when you read them, because I kind of think back to that era. I don't. You were just a nightmare in somebody's dream. Back then,
somebody's
Brian.
pants. What are you talking about?
Okay,
Right.
let's start with
a figment of someone's imagination.
That
at
would be
point.
better?
Yeah.
Better than a nightmare in somebody's dream? Okay. I kind of like Nightmare in Someone's Dream. Bill and Betty. Bill and Betty is our case study today.
Who determines
for
the
this
names?
segment.
Who comes
I
up
come up
with
with the names.
Bill
You will
and Betty.
see a consistency in nameology as we go through the next 3 segments of the show. Bill and Betty is number 1. Here are the facts. Income, $110,000 per year. Tax debt. Dun, 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 dun. $100,000. This is income taxes over the last 3 years. Credit card debt, $100,000.
Hey, they're consistent.
I'm trying to make the numbers easy for us to work with. House underwater, fair market value $230,000. First mortgage $300,000. Second mortgage $50,000.
Not unrealistic to what we've seen over the last year.
Happens. Cars, they lease their cars. I'm just throwing that in so we don't have to worry about installment payment obligations. They're leased cars. They have $100,000 in their IRA. So they've got some savings that they've tucked away. So I want to start off, we have to analyze, we have to issue spot when we look at a question like this of what are the issues that we have to grapple with that come to mind right off the bat without delving into them. And these are the ones that I see, and then I'll turn it loose to you guys, and we'll start delving into them.
Well, Bill and Betty clearly have to decide whether they need to exit and move to Guam.
There's the Guam issue. There's a tax
Guam's
issue.
nice.
I've never been to Guam. Right now,
Weather's
I
probably
wouldn't
warmer than it is
Is
here.
it close to the Philippines? Because I don't think I'd want to hang out there for a while.
Probably not.
Protecting your IRA. What about their IRA? That's a little bit of concern there. You got a house underwater. You got credit card debt. So beyond the Guam issue that Brian has so aptly interjected into the conversation, we have to really focus on this tax problem. What are we going to do about the credit card debt? And is the IRA vulnerable? And if that's the case, what do we do? So I want to start with the tax issue. Jenny's our tax guru. She deals with this stuff day in and day out. So I kind of want to look at the options, look at the range. Now, this is $100,000 worth of debt. So what does that say to you right away in terms of payment options?
Well, it means that we're not able to use the streamlined options. The IRS has two options for streamlined agreements. If it's less than $25,000, you can do it over 72 months and have no lien. If it's between 25 and 50, again, you can do it over 72 months as long as you agree to direct debit, and you can request no federal tax lien. Since it's above that threshold, we have to look at what they call an installment agreement based on ability to pay.
All right, hold on for a second. I just want to, because I don't want to jump too fast. So, if the liability is $50,000 or less, when a client comes in that situation, if their tax returns are current and they're filed, you're able to process quite easily a payment plan on an automatic basis of up to 72 months.
That's correct.
All right. What if they can't afford to do that?
Well, if they can't afford that, we go back to looking at the installment agreement based on ability to pay. We would look at the offer and compromise, which we're just going to quickly disregard here because of the fact that they have $100,000 in the IRA. When you look at the pennies on the dollar advertising that you hear where the IRS agrees to settle for less than they're owed, the first thing they're going to look at is liquid assets. So as long as you have access and you're not in the type of employment where you have to retire to take the funds out, this would make an offer not a viable situation.
All right, we're coming up to a break, and now so the bottom line there is Streamline is not available. We're going to come back from the break, and we're going to talk about how do you deal with the IRS when it's over $50,000. We'll be back after the break.
I couldn't get out of the car. I couldn't run or exercise. I couldn't work.
Dr. Lewis Radin believes that pain shouldn't have to wait. His Spine Specialist of Michigan is a comprehensive center dedicated to helping you manage pain now. Expect the latest techniques and personalized care. Why suffer another minute?
He's the best. I tell people that he's the one that saved my life.
Make your appointment with Dr. Radin. Call 248-792-9496.
Are you struggling to pay your mortgage? Afraid of foreclosure and the financial mess it can cause? Time is not on your side. Call Alan Stalter, the short sale specialist. For years, Alan has been helping distressed homeowners navigate through the short sale process. His experience will get you out of your home without the credit score damage that follows foreclosure. If you want a fresh start, you need to call Alan Stalter, the short sale specialist, 248-854-3829 or MetroDetroitShortSale.com.
No one ever thinks that a serious injury can happen to them, but it can, and it does. And it can happen to you. And when it does, you need a fighter in that courtroom for you. Call me, Ben Johnson. Automobile accident, police misconduct, medical malpractice, product liability. You know what you're up against, how hard it is to get answers. When all you want is justice, call me, Ben Johnson. Whatever your legal crisis, I will fight for you. Call me today.
Do you have tax problems, unfiled returns, facing levies on wages in your property? You need an expert, not a cartoon character or salesman. Thav Gross is your solution.
You need to look at the big picture. That's what we do. We develop a plan that's right for you.
I had major tax problems. I didn't know what to do.
We did. We sat down together and solved your tax problem.
No more letters, no more phone calls. They saved me.
Call Thav Gross, 888-235-HELP.
Going from hourly to salary seemed like a good career move, but now you're working 60 hours a week instead of 40, and you aren't getting paid any of that extra time. You're stuck, right? Wrong. You can be on salary and still be entitled to overtime. If you've been wrongly denied such pay, you may be entitled to that and more. Gold Star Law is here to help you through your employment law problem, whatever it is.
Gold Star Law. protecting employees' rights. Call 1-800-WAGES-10 for a free consultation today.
So, all right. So, Jenny, when we went up to the break, we concluded Bill and Betty are not going to qualify for a streamline. So what's your option on how you get them into a payment plan if we want to stay out of bankruptcy with regard to the taxes?
Well, the next thing that we would do is look at what they call the installment agreement based on ability to pay. We would take their net income, and then we would look at what their current expenses are. The problem there is the IRS does cap expenses for things such as food and clothing, housing, car payments, gas, and insurance, and often people are spending more. They also would not allow the credit card debt in this situation.
All right, now that's a biggie right off the bat, because if you got $100,000 of credit card debt, let's just figure 2.5% is your average minimum monthly payment, and in that case, your situation would be you got $2,500 a month going out for the credit card debt. If you're making those credit card payments, you're not going to have a heck of a lot of beans left over to pay your uncle.
So
Uncle Sam,
the first thing that I would do there is I would also look at, I think the current income is too low for the option. There are some discretionary provisions in the Internal Revenue Manual. There's one that would allow expenses, if reasonable, if the payment plan could pay back the liability within 72 months.
All right, now how does the IRA come into that situation?
Well, in that situation, it's possible that we would not have to look at the IRA if we could get somebody to grant that discretionary provision. The problem is...
Wait. Get somebody to grant. Are we talking about like somebody
with the
in
IRS,
the government?
The problem is we would strategically have to probably, in this instance, we wouldn't want to deal with the general collections, the 800 number. I would probably have to wait for a final notice so that I could file for a CDP hearing and deal with either a settlement officer or an appeals officer, because those are the individuals that have the ability to look at discretionary provisions.
All right, I want to back up, because the IRS would have the right to go after the IRA, correct? That's the one thing. We talk about retirement money being protected all the time from the trustee in bankruptcy, which in the bankruptcy context, they can't go after the IRA, correct, Brian?
That's correct.
But the government has the right to go after your 401k and your IRA when you're behind in taxes, so that's always a big problem.
They can even go after the bulk of your pension if you receive monthly pension payments.
Okay. Go on.
So what we do in that situation is that's a very unusual situation if you're going to be able to full pay, that they would come after the IRA. However, sometimes you have a very aggressive revenue officer who, for whatever reason, doesn't like what you've done, and they say they're going to move that option.
Okay, well, here's what I want to go with. I want to go with the assumption, so we move onto the case study and bring Brian in from a bankruptcy standpoint, and we do a comprehensive analysis of options. But let's go with the assumption in this case, with the income where it's at, with the credit card debt where it's at, with the allowances, we can't come to a good payment arrangement on the debt, and we have an aggressive collection officer who's threatening to grab the IRA, who's just saying, listen, I don't want to waste my time with Bill and Betty who haven't paid their taxes. I'm going to grab the IRA, the taxes will be paid, everything will be done. I don't care with the fact that they'll have to pay 10% penalty on the $100,000, and that'll be taxable to them in the year that I take the money. That's what I'm going to do. You're throwing your hands up, and then we say, Brian, our savior.
Well, first,
can you help us?
I would like just to go back and say how this really works in our office, because this is a very typical situation that I have every week. After I look at it and I say, okay, well, the 72-month full pay is not going to work because you can't afford to do that and make those credit card payments, and I wouldn't advise that anyways, then I would be looking at, okay, maybe I need debt resolution, but more likely what I would be doing is buzzing Brian and saying, you know, Brian, I think I have a Chapter 13 candidate in my office. Can you come down? And this is what we do. It probably happens
3-4 times a week minimum.
Right. And then Brian comes down and I say, okay, here's what the tax issue is. Here's what I think I could do that way. It doesn't make sense. What can you do?
Well, Jenny, let me ask you a question before I tell you what we
Good
can
point,
do with the
Jenny.
bankruptcy. Can you get me a year?
Probably.
And in that year, can you get me a year where we're paying, if we're paying something to the taxing authority, some minimal amount for at least 12 months, so I can get to the point where we're more than 3 years in a day after a tax came due and has been filed?
There are a couple of things that we can do. One, again, we can go back to the CDP, which will extend the time. The problem is that might not work for bankruptcy. There's another provision in there which wouldn't be a 72-month payment.
All right. So the answer is yes, but share with us, Brian, the secret as to why are you trying to get to that year?
Well, this client is a perfect candidate for a bankruptcy, a Chapter 13 bankruptcy. From the standpoint of what we will do is we will be able to lien strip their second mortgage because, as we note, their house is underwater and the $50,000 doesn't have any equity attached to it.
So that becomes an unsecured debt. We don't have to pay the second mortgage back.
The credit cards become an unsecured debt. They can be paid as little as 0 cents on the dollar. They have no say in the matter. And now we have to, though, because these taxes are from the last 3 tax years, they're what we call a priority tax obligation. Priority taxes must be paid in full during the 5-year maximum lifetime of a Chapter 13, which means that we've got to pay back $100,000 at no interest in this situation over 5 years.
If we can't, what does that mean?
Well, if we can't, then we're not...
Why can't we just leave a little balance at the end?
Well, that is a potential option. Chapter 13 and the Bankruptcy Code requires full repayment of a priority debt.
And taxes, what are priority debts?
In this case, a priority debt, the example that we're talking about is taxes that are less than 3 years old. So the last 3 tax years are non-dischargeable tax obligations that fall into the category of a priority debt. If a tax came due more than 3 years ago, was filed more than 2 years ago, this is income tax, and hasn't been assessed in the last 240 days, it falls into the category of general unsecured debts. That means I can treat it like a credit card and pay it 0.
You don't have to full pay it?
Don't have to full pay it.
Will it be discharged at the end or no?
It will be discharged at the end if it's more than 3 years old and filed more than 2 years ago.
So the key in our case when we come back from the break is we have to make this thing work so that we can get all, the goal is let's get all the taxes paid first in this bankruptcy, full pay, and then we don't care about the credit card debt, right?
Right.
All right, we'll be back after the break. You're going to tell us how we do that.
All right.
You like your job. What you don't like is the way your boss has been treating you. He's making comments about how you look instead of your work, and he's been touching you inappropriately. If you complain, is he allowed to fire you? Absolutely not. Unwelcome sexual comments, advances, and contact are illegal in the workplace. Make him pay. Gold Star Law is here to help you through your employment law problem, whatever it is.
Gold Star Law, protecting employees' rights. Call 1-800-WAGES-10 for a free consultation today.
Every family has the family meeting, and we all know what that means. Dad's got dementia. What are we going to do? What's the care plan that the family has in place? Usually they don't, or they struggle with a care plan. When you go home tonight and you talk to your tax person and you talk to your financial person, say, what's the plan that you have in place? And as soon as they don't give you an answer, give me a call, because I can do it for you.
Financially strapped? Do you want to save your home?
It's all about preserving future income. Bankruptcy is one option. When it's right, it's the least costly, most effective way to save your home, eliminate a second mortgage, and wipe out credit card debt. But you need to address the problem now.
We help people with bankruptcy. Call the experts.
We're Thav Gross. Our firm will solve your problem.
888-235-HELP. That's 888-235-HELP.
Double Action. Shooting Center and Gun Shop. For the largest selection of guns, accessories, and ammunition, Double Action is your only pro gun shop. And now you can train with the best in our basic CCW course. With the most comprehensive curriculum, the best resources, and most accomplished staff. Don't be fooled by cheap imitations. Double Action is the only place to get your CCW or renewal. Double Action. We're on DeQuinder and Madison Heights.
No one ever thinks that a serious injury can happen to them, but it can, and it does. And it can happen to you. And when it does, you need a fighter in that courtroom for you. Call me, Ben Johnson. Automobile accident, police misconduct, medical malpractice, product liability. You know what you're up against, how hard it is to get answers. When all you want is justice, call me, Ben Johnson. Whatever your legal crisis, I will fight for you. Call me today.
Carrying too much debt? Dump your debt. Call Thav Gross.
You don't need to be broke, and you don't need to hit rock bottom. If you have income and you're struggling with debt, dump it. Think about the next 10 or 20 years. If you do what the banks tell you, you'll have nothing to retire with. There is a solution.
Don't waste your future. Call Thav Gross. We're experts at eliminating credit card debt. 888-235-HELP. That's 888-235-HELP.
All right, welcome back. Before we get back to this complicated process that we're migrating through on this taxes in Chapter 13 bankruptcy, I want to have a couple announcements. First of all, I've been talking about it for 2.5 years. The Financial Crisis Analyzer has finally been launched. This is actually a program that I put together and drafted where you can input your information into it. It'll crunch and analyze the information and give you a report saying you're right for a 13, maybe you're right for a 7, you could short sale, you could modify, and it kind of gives you an analysis of what your options are.
What's the best part about it?
It's free.
There you go.
And all you have to do to get there is just go to our website, financialcrisistalkcenter.com, and you'll see there's this little button that says click here, free financial debt analyzer. You click on that, it runs you through the program, you put in your information, and then it emails you a report setting forth what how it analyzes your issues. So it finally took the financial crisis is just about over in some people's view. It took me that long to get the program done, but it is done, and it is launched. Seminar coming up, 2014, The Road to Success, Wednesday, January 15th, after the holidays, 7:30 to 8, at our offices in Bingham Farms. New topics this year. We're going to go to the importance of budgeting in the home and business, something that Brian is very involved in. He's got a big presentation on budgeting issues. And we're also going to be covering planning for your parents' last or later years. We're going to talk about Medicaid planning, living positive on limited retirement and Social Security income, and protecting your estate from underwater rental or residential property. So the focus of the seminar starting next year is not going to just be, quote unquote, I've got a financial problem. It's going to be, I need to explore my financial issues. Much broader based, covering a far range of options. I want to thank our sponsors, Venn Johnson Law, Gold Star Law, Samasco Law, Double Action Shooting Range and Gun Shop, Spine Specialists of Michigan, our newest sponsors coming on board, Cardiology Associates of Michigan, and also REO Specialist Alan Stalter, a real estate broker. And also special thanks to our gift certificate sponsors who are with us all the time. Johnny Pomodoros is actually offering for this Saturday, November 30th, because the show's going to air on TV later, but for this, if you're listening on the radio, for today, or not for today, for November 30th, there's a special. It's the American Express Small Business Special. 10% off all items in the store except sale items, gift cards, and bottle deposits. So, we have this close relationship with all of the credit card companies, and, so we're happy to assist with regard to Johnny Pomodoro's promotion with American Express. There's a little glib there, but it's still, Johnny Pomodoro's is a great market over at 14 Mile and Middle Belt. Hope you get there. And thanks also to Detroit Popcorn, who's always providing us gift certificates for the show. Now, back to Bill and Betty.
Yeah, Ken, I got to make a couple points here because you guys were talking about the intricacies and all the strategies to maximize the benefits for the client. And that's all technical stuff. And when a brain surgeon goes in to take care of your aneurysm or remove your occipital lobe or whatever, they know how to do that. And that's what Jenny and Brian and you have been talking about. But I need to emphasize that typically when a client comes in, they're in triage mode. They only deal with whatever is in their face at that moment. So if the credit card company has started an action against them or given a demand letter or they got one of these final notices or second final notice from the IRS,
they're in a panic.
They're going to come in and say, you need to take care of the credit card company or you need to take care of this or whatever it may be, or it could be the mortgage. But what we do is we look at it and we look at all of the elements that are going on, all of the forces, the ones that are immediate and not immediate, and then we need to develop the plan. And it may be that we deal with the taxes in one order, the credit cards in the other order. So that's what you have to keep in mind. And the other thing is, I want to emphasize, Jenny said, if you're sitting there and all you're doing is listening to the 1-800
Bill and
number,
Betty need a solution. But go
Yeah,
ahead.
but
listen,
and
there's methods that we can implement that can get us to talk to human beings. You're not going to be able to do that on the phone with the IRS.
You got a good point.
Solutions. That's the whole point.
I don't want generics because you're down to specifics.
Okay.
What are we going to do with Bill and Betty?
Bill and
you got
Betty-
2 minutes to wrap them up. Then you can give me all the generics you want.
Bill and Betty can file an immediate Chapter 13 if their income and expenses affords them the ability to full repay the taxing authority within the 5 years. Or Bill and Betty can file a Chapter 13 immediately if we can get the IRS to agree to less than full
All right,
pay.
well, let's assume we have enough disposable income in the Chapter 13. We've got about $2,500 a month.
Okay, that's great. That gives Bill and Betty a full repay.
So what that would mean
to the taxing authority only.
Imagine I have a chart, which is what kind of on your outline, and if you're watching on TV, we're going to fill out
There's
the chart.
going to be $100,000 that's going to go to the IRS based
Okay.
on your chart.
How much
and
goes
there's
to the
gonna be
second mortgage?
$35,000 left over to be distributed. The $35,000 will be distributed on a pro rata basis to the second mortgage of $50,000 and the $100,000 in credit card debt. And at the end of the 5 years, everybody is done being paid, and Bill and Betty go on to pay their
and
mortgage.
if I understand you correctly, as long as that number that we had to split up for everyone was at least $100,000, the IRS would get paid, and the other unsecured creditors would get nothing. But if we had less than the $100,000 to pay the IRS, then we'd have to get permission. Is that what you're saying?
We either have to get permission, or if you recall, I spoke to Jenny about, can we get a year? And the question is there's options to keep the ball
tell me
juggling
exactly,
in the air.
if you got the year, what would you do with it?
What I would be able to do is turn one of the non-dischargeable tax years into a dischargeable tax year.
Even in a Chapter 13?
Even in a Chapter 13, because I'm going to file the Chapter 13 a year later.
So then you would full pay the other ones in the...
$66,000 would get paid, and $33,000 of the taxes would become a dischargeable unsecured debt.
So if there was a little residual left on that amount, we deal with it after the bankruptcy?
There could be, yes, but in this case,
But the
there
other
wouldn't be.
2/3 we'd get knocked out.
Yes.
I like that.
So you're not going to get the year unless you talk to Jenny. You
And that's-
can't do it on your own.
why when
bigger point. You better be talking to somebody that understands not just bankruptcy. You better be talking to someone that understands the tax aspects of what your issues
You
are
cannot-
in bankruptcy, or you've got a disaster
You
on your
cannot
hands.
just look at one issue. If you have debt, we have to analyze the entire structure of your situation and find the best solution to cover everything.
All right, so that Bill and Betty's situation had some complexity. There's no question about it. If you were listening to this segment, you're sitting there saying, what is he talking about? The most important point, I think, is you got to analyze it to come up with the right solutions. Stay tuned. We'll be back with another segment of the Financial Crisis Talk Center.